Learning objectives. After completing this module, you will be able to discuss the Meiji Restoration, list Meiji reforms, discuss re-emergence of Japan as a global economic power, outline history of China, list China's physical features, explain the rise of the Communist Party of China, discuss the Great Leap Forward movement, discuss Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution. Paths to Modernization. Introduction. Each society in history has modernized in its own distinct way. China and Japan exemplify it. Japan never came under the rule of any colonial power. The 20th century saw Japan take giant strides into economic and industrial progress. By the 12th century, there was a transition of power from emperor to shoguns at Edo, modern Tokyo. The country was divided into 250 territories, each one headed by lords called daimyo. The daimyos were instructed to stay in the capital for long durations to circumvent rebellions. Samurais were the ruling military class serving the shoguns and daimyos. Three major developments in the 16th century molded the future of Japan. The peasantry was prohibited from carrying arms to prevent armed feuds. The daimyos were granted more freedom. Land surveys were conducted to track productivity and streamline revenue base. Edo, Osaka and Kyoto, three major cities of Japan, largely contributed to a flourishing commercial economy and a high-spirited culture. Increased use of money and creation of stock market helped the economy develop in more than one ways. Major social and cultural changes took place during this period. The educated class questioned the Chinese influence and promoted Japanese literature. The Meiji Restoration. The Meiji Restoration was a turning point in the history of Japan. The demand for trade and diplomatic relations in Japan was mounting. In 1853, Japan was pressured by USA into signing a treaty granting permission for trade and open diplomatic relations. Japan lay strategically on the route to China, foreseen as a major market by the USA. Till then, Japan had trade relations with only one Western country, Holland. A tumultuous movement in 1868 ousted shogun and brought emperor to Edo, which was made the capital and renamed Tokyo, meaning Eastern capital. British dominance in Asia cautioned Japan regarding its own colonization. While many Japanese scholars and leaders were open to learning new ideas from Europe, a handful wanted to keep Europeans at bay yet learn the technologies they mastered. Many favored a gradual and controlled exposure to the world outside Japan. The government in Japan popularized the slogan Fukoku Kyohei, rich country, strong army, to create a sense of nationhood among its countrymen and instill a feeling of being a citizen, not subject. The intent was to develop their economy and strengthen the army. The government introduced the emperor system, according immense power to the emperor to govern with the help of bureaucracy and the military. The emperor, considered to be a direct descendant of the sun goddess, was held in very high esteem. He was also shown to be influenced by westernization. The emperor donned Western-style military uniform. His birthday was declared a national holiday. Meiji reforms. Administrative reforms. To integrate the nation, the Meiji government launched a new administrative structure by modifying the old boundaries of villages and domains. Feudalism was abolished under the Meiji rule in 1871. Economic reforms. Meiji reforms targeted at modernizing the economy. Japan's first railway line, spanning between Tokyo and the port of Yokohama, was built in 1870 to 1872. Modern banking institutions came into existence in 1872. Zaibatsu business families commanded the economy. Industrial reforms. Textile machineries were imported from Europe. Foreign technicians were engaged to train workers. Their services were also used in universities and schools. Japanese students were encouraged to study abroad. Numerical strength of people in manufacturing industries increased. Most of these workers were women. The factories too increased in size. Meiji reforms. Agricultural reforms. Funds were raised by levying an agricultural tax. Constitutional reforms. Japan adopted a new constitution in 1889. The Meiji Constitution created a parliament called Diet. It placed the emperor in the commanding position of the forces. The constitution was based on restricted or limited franchise. Educational reforms. A new school system was initiated in 1870s. School education was made mandatory for all boys and girls. It became universal by 1910. A nominal amount was charged as tuition fees. Tokyo University was established in 1877. Military reforms. All young men over 20 had to compulsorily serve in the army for a stipulated duration. A modern military force was developed. The military and the bureaucracy functioned under the direct command of the emperor. Re-emergence of Japan as a global economic power. Japan was demilitarized after a disastrous defeat in the Second World War. A new constitution was imposed. Article 9 contained in the constitution had no war clause that prohibited the use of war as an instrument of state policy. The new constitution introduced agrarian reforms, re-established trade unions, endeavored to terminate major monopoly houses, zaibatsu, and also revived political parties. Elections were held in 1946 after the introduction of the new constitution. Women for the first time were granted voting rights. The resurrection of the Japanese economy after defeat is nothing short of a post-war miracle. The reasons can be traced back in its long history. A surge in demand caused by the Korean and the Vietnamese wars also boosted the Japanese economy. Re-emergence of Japan as a global economic power. The 1964 Tokyo Olympics marked the re-emergence of Japan. The Shinkansen, high-speed rail networks, bullet trains, prove enough competence of the Japanese to use superior technologies. The impact of industrialization was visible on health and environment. Cadmium poisoning was followed by mercury poisoning in Minamata in the 1960s. Air pollution was also caused its own set of problems in 1970s. Civil society movements came up to protest against problems of industrialization. The 1960s witnessed the growth of civil society movements. Pressure groups sought a solution to these problems as well as compensation for the victims. By 1980s, the government initiated strong measures to regulate environmental issues. China. Physical features. China is a vast continental country spread into many climatic zones. The mainland is dominated by three major river systems: the Yellow River, Huanghe, the Yangtze River, Changjiang, the third longest river in the world, and the Pearl River. Most of its terrain is mountainous. There is a multitude of ethnic groups: Han, Uyghur, Hui, Manchu and Tibetan. Uyghur, Hui, Manchu and Tibetan are the major languages spoken in China. Regional diversity can be observed in the Chinese food. The southern or Cantonese cuisine is popular for dim sum, meaning touch your heart, a variety of dumplings and pastries. Wheat is a staple food in the north. Szechuan spices stand out for a fiery spread. Both rice and wheat are consumed in eastern China. History of China. The history of modern China is rooted in its first encounter with the West in the 16th and 17th centuries. The British overpowered the Qing dynasty after the First Opium War during 1839 to 42. The Second Opium War was fought in 1856 to 1860. The history of modern China raises three issues: A. How to regain sovereignty. B. End humiliation of foreign occupation. C. Enforce equality and development. There were three different views. Liang Qiqiao believed that traditional ideas could be used in various new ways to meet Western challenges. He popularized Chinese nationalism. Republican revolutionary Sun Yat-sen was influenced by the ideas from Japan and the West. He founded modern China and established a republic in 1911 AD. The Communist Party of China, or CCP, wanted to put an end to age-old inequalities and ousts foreigners. Although CCP and Kuomintang worked on the opposing sides and disliked each other's ways of how China should be run, they believed that political stability could only be established by uniting the country and stabilizing the nation. Chiang Kai-shek, leader of Kuomintang, militarized China. CCP leader Mao Zedong conducted Soviets or peasant councils and resisted Japanese colonization. Kuomintang's, the National People's Party, escalated attacks, forced the Soviets to shift their base to Yan'an after a 1,200-kilometer long march. The Communist Party emerged victorious and established the People's Republic in 1949. Establishing the Republic. The weak Manchu dynasty collapsed and a republic was established in China under Sun Yat-sen in 1911. He studied medicine but was more concerned about the future of China. Sun Yat-sen's program was known as the Three Principles, which targeted nationalism to oust the Manchu, considered to be a foreign dynasty, and other foreign rulers. Democracies to establish a democratic government, and socialism for a fair division of land. The revolutionaries believed that inequality and poverty could be reduced only if the foreigners who controlled the natural resources were ousted. Hence, they appealed for the same. They also stood for reforms like usage of simple language, abolition of foot binding, female subordination, and equality in marriage and economic development. Establishing the Republic. The political philosophy of Kuomintang was based on Sun Yat-sen's idea. They identified four great needs: clothing, food, housing, and transportation. Chiang Kai-shek, 1887 to 1975, led the Kuomintang after Sun passed away. His military drives aimed to control the warlords, regional leaders who seized authority, and eliminate the communists. He approved of a secular and rational this worldly Confucianism. He wanted women to foster the four virtues of chastity, appearance, speech, and work, but restricted their role and responsibilities to the household only. The Kuomintang failed to unite the country because of its narrow urban base and myopic political vision. An important part of Sun Yat-sen's program of regulating capital and equalizing land was never implemented. The party sidelined the peasantry and the ever-increasing social inequalities. It rather used army to suppress people instead of addressing the problems they faced. The rise of the Communist Party of China. The Japanese invasion of China in 1937 weakened China and shattered the lives of the common man. China faced two critical crises. 1. Ecological, due to soil exhaustion, deforestation and floods. 2. Socio-economic, rooted in exploitative land tenure systems, in indebtedness, primitive technology and poor communications. The CCP was established in 1921. Mao Zedong, 1893 to 1976, became a major leader of the CCP. The working class in Russia brought about a revolution in cities. But Mao based his revolutionary programs on the peasantry. Mao and the communists camped at Jiangxi from 1928 to 1934 to stay safe and away from Kuomintang attacks. Mao's radical philosophy took shape during this time. A strong peasant Soviet was developed and lands were confiscated to be redistributed among peasants. He favored women's associations. He introduced new marriage laws that forbade arranged marriage. He discontinued the purchase or sale of marriage contracts and simplified the procedure of divorce. Long March. The Kuomintang surrounded the CPP-controlled areas from three sides, forcing them to seek another base. The communists, as result, took a 6,000 miles long march 1934 to 1935 to reach Sangzi. At their new base, Yan'an, they gave shape to the three programs of ending warlordism, implementing land reforms and eradicating imperialism. The communists and the Kuomintang were a united force during the war against Japan, but at the end of the war, the communists defeated the Kuomintang and seized power. Establishing the new democracy, 1949 to 65. The People's Republic of China, established in 1949, was based on the principles of the new democracy. Economy was directly controlled by the government. Private enterprise and private ownership of land was put to an end. The Great Leap Forward movement, launched in 1958 to catapult the country into the path of quick industrialization. People set up steel furnaces in backyards. People's communes, where land would be collectively owned and cultivated, were initiated in the rural areas. Mao inspired and encouraged the masses to achieve goals set by the party. Mao wanted to create a socialist man who had five loves: fatherland, people, labor, science, and public property. The commune system did not get the desired results. The backyard furnaces were not usable industrially. Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution. The Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution of 1965 was a result of conflicts between Maoists promoting the concept of socialist man and those opposing it. The Red Guards, students and army was used to give negative publicity to the old culture, old customs and old habits. Students and professionals were sent to village to learn from masses. Ideology and slogan gave way to rational debate. The Cultural Revolution weakened the party, unsettled the economy, and disturbed the educational system. In 1975, the party once again stressed upon greater social discipline and worked towards an industrial economy. Reforms of 1978 Deng Xiaoping. Deng Xiaoping had strict control over his party while introducing a socialist market economy. In 1978, the party announced its goal as the four modernizations: science, industry, agriculture and defense. The fifth modernization proclaimed that the impact of modernization would nullify without democracy. On the 17th anniversary of the May 4th movement in 1989, intellectuals demanded more openness and dissolution of ossified dogmas, Su Shaozi. Demonstration by students at the Tiananmen Square in Beijing was brutally suppressed. Ways to develop China is an issue often debated in the post-reform period. It is fast being accepted that instead of copying West, traditional ideas, Confucianisms, and China's own traditions can help it build a modern society. The story of Taiwan. Taiwan had been a Japanese colony since the Chinese surrendered it after the 1894-95 war with Japan. The Cairo Declaration 1943 and the Potsdam Proclamation 1949 restored sovereignty to China. The repressive government formed by GMD under Chiang Kai-shek forbade freedom of speech and also banned political opposition. They forbade the local population from acquiring positions of power. They introduced land reforms to increase agricultural productivity and modernize the economy. Taiwan transformed into a democracy after the death of Chiang in 1975. Martial law was lifted in 1987 and opposition parties were legally permitted. Diplomatically, most countries have only trade missions in Taiwan. Complete diplomatic ties are avoided because Taiwan is considered to be part of China. The question of reunification with the mainland has been a debatable issue always, but cross-strait relations, that is, between Taiwan and China, have been improving. China can agree to a semi-autonomous Taiwan so long as it gives up demands for complete independence. Summary. In this module, you have learned the Meiji Restoration was a turning point in the history of Japan. In 1853, Japan was pressured by USA into signing a treaty granting permission for trade and open diplomatic relations. A tumultuous movement in 1868 ousted shogun and brought emperor to Edo, which was made the capital and renamed Tokyo, meaning Eastern Capital. Meiji reforms targeted at modernizing the economy. Japan's first railway line spanning between Tokyo and the port of Yokohama was built in 1870 to 1872. modern banking institutions came into existence in 1872. Japan adopted a new constitution in 1889. The Meiji Constitution created a parliament called Diet. A new school system was initiated in 1870s. School education was made mandatory for all boys and girls. All young men over 20 had to compulsorily serve in the army for a stipulated duration. Japan was demilitarized after a disastrous defeat in the Second World War. A new constitution was imposed. Elections were held in 1946 after the introduction of the new constitution. Women for the first time were granted voting rights. The 1964 Tokyo Olympics marked the re-emergence of Japan. The history of modern China raises three issues. A. How to regain sovereignty. B. End humiliation of foreign occupation. C. Enforce equality and development. The weak Manchu dynasty collapsed and a republic was established in China under Sun Yat-sen in 1911. The Japanese invasion of China in 1937 weakened China and shattered the lives of the common man. The People's Republic of China, established in 1949, was based on the principles of the new democracy.